Welcome to The Marketer's Exit, the podcast for marketers curious about freelancing, starting a side hustle, or exploring what life could look like beyond the 9-to-5. I'm Tas Bober. I left the in-house marketing world to build a landing page consultancy, and now I work 3 days a week while making the same and sometimes more than I did in my full-time job.
And I'm Tim Davidson. I stepped out of the agency grind to start my own LinkedIn ads consultancy. More flexibility, better work-life balance, and plenty of time to sip cocktails on a beach. Just kidding, I live nowhere near a beach, but it's still way better. We come from different sides of the marketing world. Me from agency, Tas from in-house, but we both got out.
And now we're pulling back the curtain on what it's really like to go solo. The smooth parts, the scary parts, and the stuff that no one puts in the LinkedIn posts and only in the group chat.
If you're thinking about freelancing, building a side hustle, or just curious what life looks like on the other side, this is your front row seat.
Okay. Welcome to episode 3 of The Marketer's Exit.
TME.
We have not released this yet because we want people to be able to binge a little bit, right? As we start getting going.
Also, it's a Netflix theory.
Also because we haven't approved the design and stuff yet, but we'll make it about you. It's fine.
We got all these stakeholders, it's terrible.
We got all these stakeholders. Us being the bottlenecks as usual.
True.
What are we covering this week?
Great topic. To productize your offer or go like the subscription/retainer model. Awesome debate because I have the retainer, you have the productized. That said, I've been wanting to kind of go into the productized, so I'm trying to learn here too. Not fully, but a little bit. I just want to dabble. I like a little dabbling.
There's a secret third option. There's a retainer model. There's just straight productized, right? Which is both of us. Mm-hmm. And then there's a third tier, which is the ideal state you want to get to. And that is a productized retainer. So the benefits of both. Ooh.
Sounds complex.
It's not, but the great thing is I have not figured that out. So this is one of those instances where we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each approach and the fact that I'm dealing with a little bit of the cons too, right? And, it's not always roses on the other side. So
it's like everything though, right?
That's like everything. I know. But you and I, we just talked about this. Like 3 people reached out to me this week alone saying, hey, I want to go out on my own. How do I get started? I'm really excited, because everyone has this perception that it's always greener on the other side. And that's not always true. There's a lot of pros to this side of life. There's a lot of pros to the other side of life where you don't have to wake up and worry about where your next paycheck is coming from, unless, of course, they lay you off, which they love to do. So anyway, I think it's worth it to start with a description of each, right? For people who I didn't even know what productized was when I was in-house. I was like, who gives a shit? It's not my world.
Yeah, because you're not selling a product, by the way. It's not like you're selling a coffee mug.
Yes.
It's productized offer.
Yes. A productized offer or retainer.
Yeah. Go. So you're the product person.
Yes.
What is productized? Like, what does that even mean?
Okay. So a productized offer is essentially you are offering the same thing to every client. The process is exactly the same for every client. You probably determine what that process is. So I'll use my offer as an example because obviously it's the easiest. So I do landing pages for B2B companies. I'm not doing it to where they come to me and they say, hey, okay, I have this landing page. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at all your landing pages. Let's audit. Oh, we'll come up with a new. It's not a new custom scope for every client that walks in. I have a set process that's 3 stages. The first is research. Second is creating the landing pages. Third is landing, the optimization piece. Every client that works with me goes through these stages, and that is the engagement. If you look at the true definition of productized, if you want the true definition of what a productized offer is or productized business is, you should read the book Built to Sell by John Warrillow, W-A-R-R-I-O-W. Very easy read. It's very small. You can probably do an audiobook of it and finish it in like 2 days. It's about an agency owner who was offering custom services and how he was drowning because he had this anchor client and then he had this mentor investor friend who basically told him to go more productized and made it easier for him to sell. I have no ambitions of selling anything right now, but the thing that was really appealing to me was the lack of scope creep. And that was something that was burning me out when I first went fractional. Okay, so a productized offer will have these components. Number one, it's a pretty packaged solution. So this is the process. This is what I have. So if you think of it as pants at Old Navy, which I love using as an example, you're not going to go into Old Navy and be like, okay, but I want, can you alter these pants for me? They're like, no, these are the pants. This is the size. This is what we have. It's repeatable across all these other colors, all these
Mhm.
other like modules, right? So it's the same kind of thing. The second component is that it is repeatable. So you should be able to run different companies through the same process. You also have the same kind of delivery methods as well, and you're giving them
Mhm.
a set amount of deliverables. So in the book, the guy creates a logo designing business. And so he just creates a logo, he walks them through this exact process, he documents everything. Every client gets this new logo, they walk through the same process. Fixed pricing usually, so there's no like scope creep in either direction. It's usually a set price, set process, set deliverables, repeat. That is kind of the components of a productized offer. That is how I run my business today.
And but in short, and like because when you're saying that definition, the funny thing is some of that applies to my model, but it's just I think the big difference is you do these kind of like 6 week sprints or so, right? It's like you come in, do all this stuff, and then it's like 6 weeks, and then we're probably basically done, right? Whereas mine is more like it's month to month, but it's like longer term. Like some of the clients stay for a year. It's just like month to month to month to month.
Yes. I would say that you actually have a productized retainer model because
That's a,
you
yeah,
you have reached the epitome. So that's where we are going to talk about the cons of my process, right? There's a retainer model that is if you're a fractional person, you have like 5 clients, they pay you X amount of dollars and you do so much work for them every month, whether it's days or whatever, but the work itself varies,
right.
right? I have set deliverables, set process, set pricing. The clients go through the same scope every time, but the issue is I have to keep selling, right? To keep that MRR thing. So that's the problem I have. You have set offer, set pricing, set process, and then you have clients coming back and needing it on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think part of that was not even by design, but more just because I'm niched down to LinkedIn ads. So like the
Mm-hmm.
product is within one kind of area. Yes, some things
Mm-hmm.
can be custom. Obviously, every
Mm-hmm.
client's different. The messaging is going to be different. The images, like all that stuff's going to be different. But the work itself is all within LinkedIn ads. There's some variations to it, obviously, but all my contracts are month to month. Some people do, 3 months minimum, year contracts, but that's more like the retainer in the sense of it's almost like a subscription. They're gonna pay
Yes.
you for consulting, for execution, all that month over month over month. There's not like a set end date unless you and the client determine one of that. Now, for definition's sake, for the retainer, if you're like in like a fractional, like we were talking about in episode 2, or if you are like a paid, let's just say like a paid media agency where you can do Google, you can do Bing, you can do LinkedIn ads, Meta, whatever it is. Every client's usually going to be a little bit different. Some want only Google ads, some want Google ads, LinkedIn, Meta, some want Bing and just Google. Whatever that is, that's where the difference of the retainer and kind of like subscription model is you have that long-term month-to-month contracts, but also it's probably more custom. It might be different custom pricing because a lot of agencies or a lot of people actually do percent of spend too. So
Yes.
there's variations of like obviously for paid media only, but where the pricing would be based off of the actual spend. So there's a little bit of
Yes.
custom work there, and it's not as I would say because you're talking about built to sell. Because of that, it's harder to kind of like outsource it or like
Yes.
have someone replace you because it's very custom and it's gonna be different and it needs your kind of like mind for that.
Yes. Speaking of the percentage of spend model, nothing I hated more when I was in house vetting agencies and they would tell me that they were going to take 18% of my media spend and they were just going to
Hmm.
swallow that up because a lot of the work was really the upfront work, but I knew the maintenance was maybe a little bit lower. There were going to be months where they barely touched the account, or they'd come in, they'd make some light suggestions and I'm like, wow, I can't believe. And I'm spending at some of these companies, I was spending 100,000 a month. At another company, I had a $10 million budget and 6 million went to paid. Well, and then I have this agency taking 18%. And I'm like, what are you even doing? And if I caught one mistake, I would be so angry. And so just things like that where I'm like, okay, that's a model, but with the agencies, which most agencies operate like this, where you have we offer all of these services. You can kind of pick what you want, and then you have this account team, and then when you're hiring, you also kind of have to hire people who know a little bit about everything, right? Rather
Hmm.
than specializing maybe in one thing. Maybe you do have a couple of like paid media strategists, but now you're also doing SEO. So then now you need SEO strategists. And so that makes it harder too to hire because you need more people who can do more work and you need more varied skill sets as well inside a true agency, which is not what either of us are building. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I don't think a lot of like smaller agencies, a lot of one person companies would do a percent of spend
Mm,
because, just to play devil's advocate, at an agency, the reason to do the percent of spend is because it helps you to staff the account.
yes.
If you do go from like $100,000 in spend a month to 1 million, and it's still the same freaking base spent or cost, like agency fee, it's hard to staff an account like that. You will
Yeah.
need more people. You will need better people for that account. The percent of spend does allow you to do that. Obviously, some companies will just be like, do everything they can to game the system and try to get you to spend more to make more money.
Yes.
Again, it's a kind of back and forth for everything. I wouldn't say a lot of the consultants do percent of spend because the staffing doesn't really matter. It's still just you.
It's
It's
just
not
you.
about that.
Yes. Okay. So, what I wrote in our episode outline here and
Docket.
how I wanted to, our docket, and how I wanted to go through with this episode is first describing each for people who don't know. I told you there was a secret third option of the productized retainer, which is where you are. We have the productized, which is what I am strictly at this stage. Then you have the retainer, which is what I used to do with the fractional stuff. And what a lot of consultants and fractional marketers will do is go retainer, sometimes hourly, which I would not recommend. I would say, you know, kind of set the stage with like a package or something like that. We'll talk about pricing in the next episode. Teaser. So we'll dive into that a little bit deeper in the next one. But I want to know, one, your perspective. Was it something that you chose? It kind of fell into your lap and you're like, okay, this is great. I get this big bunch, this MRR. What are the pros and cons of your model and how you've chosen it right now?
I think for me, what I do also does kind of require more month to month rather than the build because there's a lot more of like optimization throughout. Now, that obviously it depends, right? Like some clients, if they have someone that's actually knows LinkedIn ads and they have a team, that could be different. A lot of the clients I end up working with don't have a team. They don't have someone
Mm,
that can run LinkedIn ads or paid ads. They need someone that can actually pull the triggers within the platform. And so that's why where you need someone that's, month to month, longer term, because it's not as easy as just setting it up and letting it go. There is things you need to change. Then what happens if something happens? Like, what do you do? You wouldn't know that without someone helping you. Right. So for my services, you kind of do need that to an extent. Obviously, for me, it is better because like you said earlier, a lot of the upfront work when you're working with a new client is in that first month and 2 months.
yes.
You actually kind of like lose money in those first 2 months because you're spending more time on the account, getting everything set up, optimizing the current, like all the new messaging and all the ads, like all that stuff is new. So you actually spend a lot more time in those first couple months, and you end up spending less time over like the months after that. Obviously, things happen, and you will have months where it's more, but usually you actually spend most of the time up front, and then you less time. So when you have a retainer model, it's actually beneficial for you because you can actually breathe a little bit and be creative.
Yeah. Yes. I agree with that. I think that is one of the big things with me. And we'll talk about the pros of my model too. But the key to everything, though, is your pipeline. And,
Yes. So
whether
good
you,
point.
no matter what model you choose, no matter what lever you're pulling to get clients, we'll also talk about that in a future episode. But the biggest thing I hear about this from consultants who've been consultants 20 years before the whole like fractional wave happened, talk to ones who've been, fractional and then went back in house after 2 years, couple months. There was one person, I think Andrea, she went out on her own for like 3 or 4 months. And then she was back in house. And when I messaged her about it, I was like, hey, why the change? You barely even got started. And she was like, it just was so much anxiety for me. I
New
could
business.
not. Yeah, yes. New business is tough if you don't, have a plan for that. And the plan isn't always like post on LinkedIn. That can take forever. So we'll cover some of that in the future. But the key is pipeline. And that's why every day I'm like, tomorrow, everything could end for
Yeah.
me. And then what am I going to do? So there are some financial risks you're taking that way that you may not take as much with the retainer model. And in a traditional retainer model, you might be doing more work. In your case, which is the ideal state, it's less of that.
No, I just still do a lot of work. Don't get it twisted here.
Really? Because,
Nah, I still do a lot of work. Do not get
oh,
it
I don't
twisted
know.
here.
I just had the
I work.
perception you were just effing around most of the time,
I wish. That'd be great. Awesome. That'd be
like
awesome.
me.
No, but I think you bring up a good point because the issue with the productize where you let's say for example 6 weeks, you have to basically replace that client every single 6 weeks. That's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
new business.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds terrible. And new business is probably I will sync with the ship on this that new business is the hardest part about when you go on your own
Yes.
because the client management and the back like the finance stuff like don't get me wrong taxes suck but you'll figure that out. If you don't have new business, you don't have a business,
Yes.
right? Unless you have a client that
Yes.
stays with you forever. But the fact is, that's not going to happen. Not going to
No.
happen. So the good thing is you could, and this is what happened with me early on. I only wanted 4 clients, got 4 clients. They all stayed with me for at least a year. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I got a little complacent. And so I did
Mm-hmm.
not want to build pipeline at all. In my contracts are month to month. So when I had like 3 say, it was great working with you, but we got to leave.
Yeah.
That's the anxiety you don't want to like get in front of. So like that was a huge learning for me. That month was terrible. Hardly slept. Figured it out.
Really?
Oh, it was brutal.
You never texted me or anything. I mean,
Because I didn't want to talk to anyone.
I knew one left. I did not know 3 out of 4 left. That's crazy.
At the time, I had 5, but yeah, it was
3
3 out of
left.
5.
Whoa.
It was
Okay.
brutal. All within the same 2 weeks. Just like just
When it rains,
happened.
it pours.
When it
Yeah.
rains, it pours. So I had to replace those all within and that was freaking stressful. But that's also
Yeah.
my fault. I got complacent. I didn't want to build any pipeline. Didn't need to. I was at
Mm.
capacity. But obviously, like I mentioned, the cool thing was for a year, didn't have to worry about it. New business.
Yeah.
Good. I was awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. That things happen, right? Especially if you're month to month. No, that's the other thing to mention is I'm month to month. And that's part of my kind of pitch. That's like, I don't want to keep you in this 3 month or 1 year contract. A lot of agencies will do 1 year contracts, which is
Yes.
to be honest, it's great for like, especially if you have headcount, that's great for projecting kind of revenue. I was also talking to someone at Drive where they're a consultant like us and they do minimum 3 month contracts. So that's awesome because you can actually, project revenue and actually be a
3 months
little bit
out.
more stable 3 months out. Now, then it just kind of renews, and all that stuff. I'm probably taking a gamble at month to month if I think about it.
I mean, not that much though. I think that helps make the sale. And then how many times I mean, I was client side, so I think I can provide that perspective where, I worked with one of my paid partners. He works with me now as like part of my business. But when he was agency side and I was client side, he was month to month, but I don't think I ever thought about that Because one of the things he said too is like, yeah, we could do a long-term contract, but if you're unhappy as a client, I'm not going to hold a gun to your head and make you continue to work with me. So most agencies, even if they did have a 1-year contract, if you express that you are unhappy and you wanted to leave, most of them won't fight you on trying to get out of that. So I don't know how like safe it was anyway. I feel like, unless you were a really shitty agency that was like, I'm gonna keep this client here against their will, you don't want to burn that bridge too. So I've left agencies before my contracts too, which makes me sound like I'm a really shitty client, but there's obviously a lot of context that's missing. So I don't think it's even that safe. I actually think it puts them at ease. They bring issues up to you and they know, okay, well, I can try one more month and see if it's getting better. Versus when you're locked in a contract, you're like, I got to start this process to kick this vendor
Hmm.
out, which can be more of a thing. So yeah, risky in terms of part of the offer, but I don't think it's as bad. It's just you had a very surprising situation where 3 of them were leaving at the same time. That's usually
Yeah.
not the case.
Yeah. And let me be clear. I'm month to month because I feel confident that one, I'm choosing my clients. So they know things take longer than a month to see results. They just understand that. I also feel confident that I am good at my job. So they'll be okay with after a month, or at least feel good about where we're going. I will just kind of play devil's advocate here. I will say from agencies that have those year-long contracts, I don't think it's about like now where nothing's really happening. It's like when 2020 happens and you lose half your
Yeah.
client base and you have 100 employees, that'll be a big difference on things, right? When
Yes.
something like the V happens, or
The V.
like 2023 when every single stock just or every funding everyone stopped getting funding. That's where I can see those being helpful when you have employees and stuff like that. For me, if I did that, I would just let them out because I'm too nice. But also, that could also kill me.
Yes.
My wife's a teacher. She makes freaking diddly. It's just the fact. I have to make the
Yeah.
money, and if all my clients left at the same time, I feel
Yeah.
confident I'd be okay. But again, new business makes everything better.
Okay, so then let's talk about that because you have kind of a capacity issue, right?
Yes.
Right now. So, what is the max number of clients you can take with your model?
This is a tough one because I feel like I could say 10, but also
10?
I would hate that. I would hate that very much.
Okay, okay. What is a reasonable capacity you can take without like killing
I
yourself?
think I think right now it's 7, and this should be another episode how I went from 4 to 7 because it
Yes,
used to be
we will talk
4.
about that.
That'd be fun, but I think reasonably feel good, not lose sleep over it, and feel like I can give quality work to my clients. 7.
Okay, that's a good number.
Note, note, big note here. Can't do 7 at one time in terms of like onboarding.
Yes, they're
That's a
different
huge thing.
stages.
And that could be a whole nother
Yes.
episode, but like those are you can't do a lot of those onboardings at the same time.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, so say 7 and say you're at your capacity right now.
Mhm.
How do you keep the pipeline full? Because what you're telling these companies are like, hey, I'm at capacity and they're on a wait list. What if one of these 7 fall and then you reach back out to this company and they're like, we have someone else or whatever? Because they're not just waiting around for Tim Davidson, right? So how does that work?
That's a good point. I'll tell you what I used to do.
Yeah.
I at one point, again, this is before the 3 clients left at the same time. At one point, I just wouldn't even take a sales call. I'm at capacity. Someone
Oh,
comes. If someone scheduled it and it's like, yeah, I might have the conversation, but it'd be like a 10-minute conversation, like, hey, I'm at capacity. Love to like help you, but like here's who I would refer you to out to.
oh,
There was also
uh-huh.
times when people would DM me, I'd be like, I'm at capacity. Here's a couple of folks you talk to. Now I'll actually have sales calls. Well, I'll be upfront. I'll tell them like I'm at capacity. I do think it'll. And to be honest, sometimes I just make up this number. Like I think in 2 months I'll be free.
Okay.
And my mindset is if that 2 months comes around and I like this client, I'm just gonna suck it up and
Take them.
sleep less or something and just take them. Yeah, yeah. Because I do think at
Oh,
some point I will inevitably it happens. At some point, I will lose a client, and then that's just perfect timing. The situation I just told you was actually perfect timing. I lost a client, and they gave me 30-day
Oh.
notice. And then I had this new one coming in. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. So it's really about not just the pipeline, like having sales calls, but also just like, again, when I was at capacity, like before the 3 clients left, I wouldn't talk about LinkedIn ads at all on LinkedIn. That's my new
Mm.
business channel, right? Content, LinkedIn ads, talk about that. And that's how I get the new business. I ramp it up, comments, all that. I wouldn't even talk about it. Didn't even
You were
care.
like, screw it. I'm just
Jokes,
gonna make my
jokes,
little,
jokes, jokes,
yeah, my skits and my
skits. Yeah.
jokes.
Let me just joke around because again, I was at capacity. Mind shift
Okay.
that month scared me so much. My whole life changed. My whole new business strategy changed because now it's like more consistent, more has those sales calls. Be honest with them, it happens, and then now if this happened again, I lost 3 clients in a row because I'm at 7. It wouldn't be as bad.
Yes.
I would also have the pipeline because of just having those conversations, and I could just be like, "Hey, just let you know, opening up now." But I think I'd still stress a little bit because it's 3 clients. It's still a lot to lose in a second, and like,
Yes.
but I also know I've figured out like how to keep it going a little bit. So it's not
Okay.
perfect, but it's something.
Yeah, I like that. I'm more impressed that these companies are actually waiting 2 months. So I had a capacity issue when I was doing everything myself. And that was up until the end of last year. And so what was happening, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I was turning down clients for landing page work or giving them a wait list like, hey, okay, I'll be able to take you next month, 3 months from now. 3 months in B2B is like 20 years. They were not wanting to wait or like their priorities changed. And even though they wanted it, it moved. They gave the budget to someone else, like whatever that was. So that was a little bit different for me. I think for me, obviously, I have to keep the pipeline full almost constantly. But it's also a model that I've adopted because I was willing to take that risk. We have a situation that's flipped where, like, my husband has a full time job, like, pretty high up, big consulting firms, that kind of stuff. So, like, we knew when I went out solo, if I did nothing, brought in zero, like we're still okay. Obviously, is it volatile? 100%. Like he's been through layoffs before I've been through layoffs. So we understand that it's not bulletproof with him having the job and whatever stability for our family. But also that's why we are bargain bober and we spend way below our means and we save all our nuts for the winter. And we'll talk about like financial planning as a consultant and a solo later too, just managing your money. But so that way, I guess that pressure I don't have. The thing that would stress me out is like taking 10 and not being able to deliver to them appropriately, and the
I would do that.
quality issues and things like that. I don't have a lot of clients leaving me because they're short term engagements. So, how I've solved a little bit for my MRR problem, which is my main problem. Because what's the saying? It's like it's much harder to get a new client than keep your existing ones happy or something like that. Remember, Pep told us in Notorious B2B, he was like, it's much harder to find new clients than retain your existing ones.
There's that, but there's also as soon as you sign a new client, you've lost them, or it's like every client's going to leave you at some point. Fact. It's just an absolute fact.
Oh, mm-hmm.
I think it's a Mad Men quote. It's like, as soon as you sign a new client is as soon as they're starting to leave or something like that. I'll have to
Interesting.
find that.
Okay.
But there's
Okay.
like a famous Mad Men quote about that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna look it up as you talk.
So for me, then I'm almost being very proactive in that because when I talk to clients during the discovery calls, I'm like, it is a 90-day sprint. You never have to see my face after that if you don't want to. That is literally the phrase I use. Yes, sir.
The day you sign a client is the day you start losing them.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the quote. That's
Okay. But I just like proactively lose them. So once I sign them, I'm like, you never have to see me after 3 months. They laugh. I do have a couple of clients who come back and they want more pages and they add a month and they add a couple of months, those types of things. But most of my clients are like the 3 months and then they're done. So initially it used to be, yeah, pay me for like the landing pages. They'd give me the money. I do the work. Goodbye, which was fine. But for me to do the MRR option, I actually took my engagement and broke it out into 3 months. So if it was, like 15K at the time was the engagement. I broke it out into 5K per month. And then I'd have this 90-day sprint. So essentially, all my clients stay with me for at least 90 days. But if you have multiple of those, that gives me that MRR every month because everyone's paying their portion of it, that month. But I guess it's the same thing regardless. I could charge them 15K. They pay it up front. I do the work. And there's going to be a couple of months where I'm just like raking in like 100 grand. And then there's going to be nothing for a few months because they've already paid in full. And it's just up to me to manage the money. But that's how I do it now. It's like a per month for 3 months.
So the thing about Productized is it's still not like a product, like a physical thing. So like it's still
Yeah.
you. I know you
Yes.
have copywriters and stuff, but you're still going to run into capacity issues because you can't do this productized version for 7 companies at the same time, right?
Yes, I can.
Oh, you can.
Yes, I
You can
can.
do 7 a month
I can do 7 a month
for
easy.
90 days. All right, fine. 10. But what's the cap? There's a cap. There's got to be a cap at some
There's
point.
a cap. So the way I solved
What's the
for
cap?
that, yeah, I think I could comfortably do 10. I've never reached 10. That would be
So
great.
it's really not even there's not even a question because I
It's
was
not
just
even a
wondering if you run
question.
into a,
Yeah.
okay.
But I was running into capacity issues at the end of last year where I could only do 3 or 4 because I was doing everything. I did the research, I did the landing page writing, which is the big part of it, and I was doing any optimizations and that kind of stuff on the back end. So I was doing all of it and just getting buried on top of having my 3 fractional clients that I was doing random shit for. That was way too much for a single person to do. So when you think about the retainer model, you do have a cap. If you're doing everything yourself, you have a 3 to 4 client cap before the quality of either your life or the work suffers. And so you and I did kind of similar things where we hired for some specific roles, contract, and it was one of my clients who said, "Hey, Tas, I don't need you to do the work. I'd rather you deliver it faster than waiting 6 weeks for you to do this thing that could take someone else 2 weeks if that's all they were focusing on and they were trained in your methodology." I'm like, cool. So that's when I went and decided to get writers who are specialized in B2B SaaS. But the big key here, 2 things. One, they had a ton of experience in B2B SaaS and experience in client management so that they could manage that part of the project. They had to have like good bedside manner, not just like, oh, I'm managing the contractor. Now I'm managing the relationship with the client. No, there's a whole chunk of my engagement where it's a handoff and the writer just handles all of it. They handle the writing, the reviews, the comments, the resolutions, the back and forth. And they only come to me if there's like a special issue that they don't know how to tackle. It's very much like their experience. They have clients of their own. The second component is not having just one writer. So when I went out, I didn't go and find, I'm looking for one copywriter. I was like, I'm going to get 4. And what this gave me the ability to do, well, I just put out a post in the Exit 5 community because I knew if I did on LinkedIn, it would be a shark attack. So I went to the Exit 5 community and I knew that Exit 5 is like what primarily B2B SaaS. There's a ton of consultants and copywriters there. It kind of filters out all the like, LinkedIn land and all the random, like there's a whole side of
RP,
yes, exactly. And so I knew I wasn't going to go through that. I knew it was going to be a filtered version. And actually, Dave was the one who recommended 2 writers to me directly that he had worked with at Privy. So I knew I was going to get really good writers. And I got 4 of them. And some of them specialize in a few key areas of SaaS over others. Some of them way more experience than me with some companies that they wrote for. And since then, it has gone great. So then one of my writers goes on vacation or she's like overloaded. The other one's like, oh, I can pick that up or whatever. And, I have backups for my backup. And so that's why I say that I could do 10 easily because I have 4 writers. If each writer did a couple of 2 to 3 projects that, the landing pages only do like 2 weeks apart, they could easily do 2 or 3, 4 projects if I gave it to each one of them.
So your issue is actually new business.
My big issue is new business. Yes. Which we could spend a whole episode on.
Yeah, because you're doing like outreach and shit, right? Like,
No, I am not doing outreach actually. I should, but we will talk about that. I want to
yeah,
talk
yeah, yeah.
about new business because it's such a big component. We'll spend a whole episode and there's four levers that I claims he has five, but he doesn't know what my four levers are.
Probably six, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to post on LinkedIn. Like some of the writers that I work with, they run their own businesses and they don't. They don't most of them don't post on LinkedIn. So
I mean, if you don't post LinkedIn, are you even real? Let's be honest.
okay, I think that it's important to talk about like why we chose our specific paths. Yours kind of like
Mine's a
happened
mix.
because you picked the niche.
Yeah. So I
But
got
then
lucky
did you
there.
did you come up with the process or the niche kind of picked the process for you?
I mean, that's the thing. When you've been doing it for so long, you know what works, you know what you shouldn't be doing. And I'll say I even got better at that over time. Like you just kind of naturally figure out, oh, I shouldn't be spending my time on this. Like, or I should be spending more time on this. Like, this is actually where the 80/20 type of rule. So naturally, I kind of, there is a process. I mean, it's going to be custom to every company, but again, the process is similar. It's just like the little things within each of it. So it is kind of productized in that sense. But I think, yeah, I think to your point, because of the niche and because of just the background of doing it so long, you almost do build a product from it.
Yes, a
But then it
process.
kind of things change over. I would say the retainer model, it would be much more productized if I only did it for like 3 months
Yeah.
because the custom stuff ends up happening longer term because you've already done like the stuff that the low hanging fruit, some might say. Everything else just becomes custom because it is going to be very different to every company. So there's some custom work there, I guess.
There's I mean, you could say the same thing about mine.
True.
So like I
True.
have frameworks and things. So I have like how I do my research, how I do, the landing page creation, and I have general frameworks and I hate templates. It's not a template necessarily. It's
Right.
like I have a general layout of how I like to tell the story, but then every company's story is different. And then sometimes there'll be, for example, you'll have, how we talk about Calendly is going to be different than how we talk about a compliance management software that is highly technical, lots of compliance and regulations. There are going to be special blocks that we put in there. So the process is the same, but the output and inputs will be different based on the client, which is pretty normal. But I think the biggest thing is there's no scope creep, right? There's no client coming to you and saying, okay, Tim, well, can you go create an email in Eloqua for me? You're gonna be like, what? I do LinkedIn ads. And so they're not coming to me and going, hey, Tas, can you go pull this report for me? So that's where you kind of control the scope and the process a little bit. And so you have a little more of an ideal state than even I do, for my business, I feel like.
Do you think the scope creep comes more from the productized versus, you know, retainer model, or is it more like fractional or just like paid media in general, like not being niche is more of the scope creep? I would debate not being
Yeah.
niche is the scope creep.
Yes. And also like what are the boundaries that you're setting? Sometimes when you have
Yeah,
those retainer relationships, you really want to make the client happy because
true.
you have that relationship with them. So if you have a relationship with them where you're doing, for example, I'll give you my retainer client, right? I had a really good relationship with him. I worked with him at a previous company. Then he brought me in here. So I already have this like affinity, for him because he did this. He brought me in, gave me this opportunity. And then my scope was very much like, I have emails, that he wanted me to create, these reports that I did once a week, and attended the marketing team meetings. That was like the defined scope. But then every once in a while, he's like, hey, I can't join the sales meeting. Can you go sit in for me? Hey, can you pull this report for me really quick, even though it was not part of the reports that were at the end of the. What am I going to say? No, no, I'm not going to do
Yeah,
it. You're going to do it because that's the nice thing to do. When you have a productized model where it's like, I don't even have access to their CRMs or any of their tools internally for
right,
them to ever send me a request like that, right?
right.
Anything they ask me will be either what's limited to the scope that we've talked about because this is the process, or it might be something related to it. So they'd be like, hey, I know you're doing a vertical page for us. We have this one on the website. Like, Do you want us to replace that one with the one you're giving us, or do you want to you want us to run it on page? That's different, right? That's still part of the strategy, still part of the scope. It doesn't require any work on my part. I'm answering a question, but I don't have a lot of like, got a sack, let's jump on a quick call. Like, I don't get any of those actually at all, which is how I structured it initially.
That's a good point. I think one thing I was just thinking about is, and we have differing, I like yours a lot better, but meetings. So when you have a retainer model, I feel like you think, or you are just gonna have more meetings, because it's like month to month, you're gonna have these kind of update meetings, these strategy meetings, whatever you want to call them. At some point, I think that is part of the model. Like you got
Yes.
to meet with them at some point.
Yeah.
But I also think you can also kind of define what that looks like. In the past, I've done biweekly meetings, I've done weekly meetings. I also have clients that do monthly meetings. I also have clients that don't want to talk to me, and that's a good thing. Like if we don't talk, like have a meeting, or we're good.
Yeah.
But I do think that the retainer model does bake in more meetings because of that kind of style. For you, you just have one, like just the kickoff call, right? Not, or maybe not even.
Yeah. So to walk you through my process, I have one, the discovery call, which is usually just a one call close. Yes or no, right? He's making a face because I sound braggy right now.
A little bit.
It could be a no too,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure,
yeah, yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So there's the discovery call, which is one. Now, it's almost a signal to me when they want follow-up calls after that initial discovery call, because I've answered all the questions. Like the process is there, it's on my website, it is literally everywhere. And so if they want to keep debating on a couple of calls, that's actually a red flag for me. And so I will back off a little bit from that prospect, because vibes. Because I'm like, if this is how it is, they're not going to stick to the process. They're going to be trying to negotiate the process a lot. So I back off a little bit. Then I don't have a kickoff call. I eliminated the kickoff call. So once they sign the contract, I send a kickoff email. And so in that email, they fill out this questionnaire, I give them the instructions, all the next steps. They send this questionnaire back to me. And then a week later, we have an alignment call on the research. So all the research that they give to me, we we've already begun the work. And so that first call that I have with them, a third of the work is done. There's
Mm.
no dilly-dallying of like, what do we need to do? None of that. The third of the work is done. I go through the research. They say yay, nay, whatever. I send it to them. They get to review it on their own time. Once they approve that, I send the email for the second phase, which is, hey, here's your dedicated copywriter. Here are our recommended landing pages that we plan to create. Here is the timeline you can expect it during. No meetings during the second phase. The only meeting I have is with my writer, if the writer wants it, to go over their thought process before I review the pages. And then I review the pages and then send it to the client. And then if they go into the third phase, we have a chat about that. Most of it is done email, Loom, no Slack, none of that. So basically, when I came out, I told myself I wanted to build a process based around everything that I hated when I was in house. And it was very client centric, even if it was shooting me in the foot a little bit with the no retainer model. But basically, I was quadruple booked with meetings. I was like, okay, that's it. I need to cap the meetings, three, total. Annual contracts, no annual contracts. I'm not locking anyone into anything. They get 3 month sprints. And then every sprint after that's probably a month, because we don't have to do the research component. They usually just want more pages, do another month. No Slack. I never offer it. It's not, sometimes they will ask, and I'm like, nope, everything's via email because there's really not that much to talk about. I will give you the timelines, everything is there. No decks. I used to pull up a deck in the beginning, but now in my discovery calls, I just pull up a demo workspace that I created, show them the process there for a fake company that I made up called Tally. And then I show them the whole process there. And then they get set deliverables. So a lot of like sometimes fractional stuff is like, oh, here's a strategy for this. And then they do none of the work or they assign it out or something like that. They get set deliverables. So the product are the landing page wireframes that they get regardless at the end of the sprint, no matter how long it is.
Genuinely curious if the less meetings, no Slack is a you thing, or is it the productized? Because I could see in a world where it's productized, 2 month sprint, 3 month sprint, higher cost, but we're getting this specific thing done where I can see some products actually need more meetings because we're trying to get this shit done.
Yes.
I can see more
Yes.
Slack because you need to get shit done.
Yes.
I could see a world where that's the case.
Yeah, it is not related really to the
Okay.
productized
That's what I
offer.
figured.
It was more around, yes, me, the things I hated. So even when I had the fractional business, I set up my engagements to minimize the number of meetings, no Slack. Although my fractional client did eventually convince me to do Slack for that one. That one's hard because, like, when you are doing different things, you kind of need to have a method of communication that's more frequent. But I did have a deck at that point, and then there was still deliverables. So there was still like some of that model, but I will show that deck at some point, or I don't know if like today is the day, but basically, I structured my fractional engagements the same way, which is you get, I had three packages. You get 60 minutes of call time a month. You can use that for whatever. You can have two 30-minute
Mm.
meetings with me. You can have one 60-minute meeting with me, whatever the case may be. You get five deliverables a month, right? So I had like three deliverables, five deliverables, and eight or something like that were my packages. And then the next slide was here are the types of deliverables that I would do. So then I was trying to limit the scope and set the expectation. So then when I get a message like, hey, can you join this BDR meeting? I'm like, okay, well, we've already used 75 minutes. Like, do you want me to use it for that or do you want me to be on the team meeting later? And they would choose based on that or say, hey, you know what? I'll pay you extra for you to join this meeting. So that way you at least get paid what you're worth or for the work that you do versus succumbing to the scope creep. So it's me doing some hard boundary setting, but like, you know, making it part of the statement of work.
And then the other side of it for the more kind of retainer subscription model, I know one of the consultants, paid media, charges buku bucks, like 17K up per month for a client, and they do 0 meetings. 0.
Who's that?
I don't know if he wants to. I don't know if they want me to tell.
Wait,
So
zero. How's that? How does that work?
it's in their
Everything's in
contract. It's in their
Slack?
contract. Like everything's in Slack. They get a report every month, but
Mhm.
literally 0 meetings. Again, this comes
Okay.
out of new business. When new business is booming, do whatever you want. Fudge it.
So why don't you adopt that? Because you recently went from two meetings a
Trying,
month to now one, right?
not for all, but yes, I'm
Not for all.
trying. I'm trying to
Okay.
get there.
Okay.
My pitching is now a month.
Yes.
I'm trying
Okay.
to get there. I'm
Yes.
gradually getting better. Let's just
Yeah.
say that. My it used to be kickoff call, weekly meetings for the first month.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Weekly.
Okay.
And then it was bi-weekly.
Okay.
Then I went down to kickoff call. First two calls are weekly, then bi-weekly. Then I got to kickoff call, one more call, and then bi-weekly. Then now monthly. I'm getting there.
Okay.
Not there, but I'm
I
getting there.
think as long as you have frequent, this is coming from a client, right? Like someone who used to be
What?
the client. This is coming from someone who used to be
Oh,
client.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I think if there are regular enough touch points, I don't need to have a meeting. In fact, I would thank you for not having a meeting
Yeah.
unless we wanted to have more like a strategy talk about things that aren't going well or whatever, or things that need to pivot. I had them weekly, but did I want them weekly? No. There were a lot of times I canceled. There's no better feeling, especially when you're in house and you're in meetings all day, than when you get a meeting cancellation. You're like, thank God I can eat lunch now. I can go to the bathroom. I can do, like, world is my freaking oyster. So I would have actually appreciated, okay, I would have said, you know what? The once a month is okay, but will you be responsive in Slack and things like that? And then you could say, yeah, I'm going to send you a report weekly. I'm going to tell you, you know, here are the things that I'm working on. And I'm like, cool, because I had to report that up. So I used to have my agencies just send me, like, here are the things we worked on this week because my boss wanted to know. I didn't even care. I knew that they were doing their job, but she wasn't as close to them. And so they would just give me this thing that I would copy and paste and send into, a report for my VP at the time. I think it's doable.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, new business solves it all. Some people want meetings. That's the thing. Then you can say no.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people want meetings.
Yes. Yes. Some people want meetings. Okay. So Can we go to the pros and cons
Yeah. Let's
summarization?
run it. Let's run it.
Okay. So from my perspective, and then you can do pros and cons from yours. So the pros on my side, and this comes more from niching, so it applies to both of us. We have that differentiated positioning, right? There are thousands of millions of LinkedIn consultants. LinkedIn with ABM, not that many. LinkedIn with ABM, guy cutting fruit, zero. Just one, Tim Davidson, right? Messaging is also easy. There's so many different angles that we can talk about it, talk about the problem, luring them in, that kind of thing. When you're kind of doing everything, do you talk about everything?
Wait, this is all niching stuff, right? It's not even
No, but it's
productized.
also like, but the productizing is
Okay.
easy
Okay.
because when
Sorry.
you're messaging too, you could say,
All right.
hey, my process is only 3 steps and you will have
That's fair.
landing
Yeah.
pages,
Fair.
right?
And your sales deck is nice. Like it's real template.
Yeah. Calls are super easy. Again, you have the
Yeah.
set process, set pricing, set deliverables. My calls, I used to have 3 sometimes to even figure out what problem I need to solve for them. Now it's like landing pages. Okay, cool. How do you do that? Here's the process. What is the cost? Here's the cost. When do I get my stuff? Here's when you get your stuff. Everything is very simple, and I've done it 1,000 times. So much so that I plan to just put that on the website and just be like, okay, here's the, you don't want to do the discovery call? Here's the freaking discovery call in a Loom. That's like how defined the process is. I don't have any scope creep, which is
Hmm.
amazing. I own the process and timeline. I don't have meetings outside of three during the entire 90-day sprint. Maybe.
Yeah, it's
Most
huge.
times it's 2 meetings, including the discovery call. It's the discovery and the research most of the time. It's 2 during the entire 90-day sprint. No Slack, no pings, none of that. I don't have a deck. I do the workspace. I did put in here the faster wins for clients. So they get something tangible out of it. Like, here are your wireframes. Here's the research that you can use for literally everything outside of landing pages too. It is easier to hire for. When my one client was like, go hire, I knew immediately, I'm like, I need
Hmm.
copywriters. If I were to hire for other positions, I'd be like, okay, I got to bring someone in who's good at research, and I'm going to teach them the research process. Maybe like a product marketer kind of person could do the research for me, right? And then I already have a growth marketer who will handle the testing and optimization piece for me if I wanted that. So I literally just have those 3 roles to hire for. I don't need anything more than that. That is kind of my pros list. My cons, revenue choppiness, right? Tech, there's like a summer
Hmm.
slowdown. Last year, I felt that I was like, shit, I'm going under. This
In
is
house.
terrible. Yeah, it was like not sleeping. But then I realized, oh, and then it happened again this year where it slowed down during the summer and I actually enjoyed my summer. But for someone who needs more consistent revenue every single month, maybe you have more mouths to feed, both in terms of staffing and not, like that can be hard. It can be hard to be like, oh, I had an $80,000 month and then I have a $0 month, like that's
Hmm.
happened. The sprint this part. The sprint ends before insights can pay off. This is more specific to me because B2B cycles are really long. I give them the landing pages, they implement them. Well, sometimes the sales cycles are like 3, 6, 9 months. I got a testimonial from a client 9 months after I gave her landing pages. And she's like, hey, those landing pages are doing really well. I'm like, it's been almost a year. So that was great. I have not figured out my MRR model yet. I'm terrible at upselling, but it's like I'm not going to sell them on something that I don't think that they need. But the problem then is I have to constantly sell in order to make money, which is hard because
Yeah.
I work 3 days a week. I'm putting in like podcast recordings, client calls, not client calls, client work, networking call, all of these other things that fill up my 3 days. And sometimes it's like, I don't put content out. Well, guess what? That's how I get business. So I need to put landing page content out and not always my jokey content. That is my biggest problem. And then also the LinkedIn algorithm has been shit compared to last year. So,
Really?
yes.
Sounds like a content problem.
Yeah, content problem. Also, then my hiring is limited. If I want to bring someone on full time, that revenue choppiness bit makes it a little bit hard
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's like, oh, I don't know if I can bring someone who's just like my writer constantly for just my
That's a good point.
projects, right? So that kind of keeps it there. Okay. You do your pros and cons.
All right. So for the retainer model, the kind of classic agency model, pros are definitely the recurring revenue. Like I mentioned, there's a point where I was just at capacity for like a year. You got that consistent recurring revenue. It's huge. You don't need as much new business. Similar to yours, but on the opposite side, things do take time to work. And so you actually get to see those pay off, which is nice. Because if I just did like 2-minute sprints, you can see early wins for sure. But like one of my clients is like a 1.5 year sales cycle. I'm not going to see anything in a month or in 2 months. So like being able to see those kind of results pay off is nice, not only just for like learnings, but also like, case studies and just like overall, just like, yay, in the Slack channel type of thing. Those are nice. Again, less new business needed. I don't need to drum up business every single second, every month, every 3 months, because it's recurring. So there's a little bit of longevity and, stabilization there. And then this other one, similar to the kind of the results being paid off, is like you get to build kind of like these long-term relationships with the client and actually get to understand their business. Because like, yes, I understand.
This is such a corporate response.
But it's true.
I should get to know my clients.
True. Because in 3 months, it's hard for me to understand procurement.
Yeah.
I give 2 craps about it unless I had a client that I wanted to talk to about it and actually understand it. Yes, MarTech sales, like, I'll talk about that all day. I get that. But to understand them, like you learn more things over time, and it just helps. Like 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, you'll figure out different messaging because of that. Like there's something to that where it's like, and I love learning about these kind of niche businesses. I've talked about this before, but like Mars owns tons of veterinarians practices, like the chocolate company. Love that kind of stuff, and I learned that because of like a client that was in the veterinary space. Cons. I don't run into this as much, but it can happen. The scope creep is a problem. That's very annoying. That's gonna be a huge episode for sure. This one I think about a lot is the declined excitement and feeling the need to kind of keep innovating, because when you start with a new client, there's this like first 2 months where you like start new things, like things are going like there's like an excitement there, and then like after a certain time, it's just like,
no, it's you again.
It's like hop on the call, like everything that you kind of launch is like, there's gonna be new tests and stuff like that and new things coming up, but it kind of gets not as fun. I don't want to say boring because it's just not as fun. And then
it's like the honeymoon phase.
Yeah,
it's 100%. Like when you get married, like you start dating, you're like, oh, it's fresh, it's new, it's it's exciting, and then you're like, cool. I mean, I like this, I love this person, I'm in this relationship, and it's great, everything's going well, but it's like, whereas the butterflies are kind of like they've subsided a little bit.
And from like the consultant's point of view, you feel like you need to keep bringing innovation and ideas, which you do.
Keep the spark alive.
But sometimes it's like the thing that you actually need to do is keep doing what you're doing and just make small changes, not this big freaking huge change. But you gotta keep the spark alive, like you said. Like you gotta like kind of re-up the vowels sometimes.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's a mental thing. Again, the more meetings, that could be just my fault, but that is what ends up happening with these kind of long-term contracts.
I mean, I feel like you need to have at least a monthly touch point.
Yes.
I mean, the person who has no meetings, I'm like, okay, but at some point with that, especially if it's a lot of money that they're spending, I would feel like I want to be wooed a little bit, given some attention once a month, 1,000%. So I think once a month's like what you can get away with, probably.
Once every 6 weeks?
No, it has to be something,
cadence, right?
A cadence. Yeah, there has to be a cadence.
That's fair enough. And then there is, again, this is probably my fault, but there's some hiring limitations in terms of like, because especially for people that are more fractional, there's the custom work. So you're more reliant on just like you doing the work. And then lastly, again, you can get screwed if you're doing month to month. 3 clients leave at the same time. You can get freaking brutalized there.
Yeah, you're obviously very traumatized from that.
But yeah.
That was great. Thank you for joining us. Next week, what are we talking about?
Oh, pricing. Everyone loves talking about money. So this is going to be great.
This is going to be great. How do you price yourself, especially when you're starting out? How did pricing evolve for both of us?
Ooh, truth.
Yes, it's going to be a good one.
Oh, I hate numbers though. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I love numbers.
That'll be good.
This is right up my alley. This is great.
This will be good.
Okay, right. Retention.
Going solo isn't always easy. There are client wins, red flags, and moments where you feel on top of the world.
and moments where you question everything. But for us, it's been worth it.
We're not selling you a dream. We're sharing real stories, real numbers, and the mindset shifts it takes to build your own thing, whatever that looks like for you. Subscribe to The Marketer's Exit and send it to a friend who's this close to making a move.